Well, first of all, thank you for joining us for our Lunch and Learn today. This Lunch and Learn is part of Webcor's Black History Month program. And the Black History Month programs have been sponsored and planned and executed by The Collective, our Black employee resource group, with the support and appreciation of our executive team here at Webcor. And when I think about Black History Month, I'm really thinking about the purposes and what we're trying to achieve within Webcor. First to educate, increase the awareness and understanding of Black history and culture, celebrate the many accomplishments and contributions of Black people broadly and then within our industry. And finally, I think most importantly, to recognize that there are things that we need to change and improve upon. I think it's probably not news to say that there is a severe underrepresentation of people of color within the industry, particularly in leadership roles, and very much so in the case of the representation of Black employees. And so I'm excited to have this excellent panel joining us today to talk about Black representation in our construction industry, to hear the perspectives on what's currently happening, and just as importantly, what we need to do as an industry to move the needle going forward. So again, thank you to all of you for joining. Thank you very much for the panelists who are joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim Wortham.
Thank you, Maylin. And welcome for all of you who are watching. We thank you for tuning in with us. Special shout out to my family over at the PUC Digester, who I know they're doing a watch party. So thank you all for tuning in. My name is Tim Wortham. I am the Director, NorCal Human Resources Business Partner Services for Northern California. So we are today going to introduce our panelists. So our first panelist is Mick Penn, and Mick works for Swinerton in Northern California. He's the Regional Community Relations Liaison. Mr. Penn spearheads Swinerton's workforce development, small, diverse, and veteran business outreach, and community engagement in Northern California. He currently serves on several boards of directors, including the National Association of Minority Contractors, NorCal chapter, the Cypress Mandela Training Center, the Mission Hiring Hall, the Construction Industry Education Foundation Board of Trustees, and the City of Richmond Workforce Development. So, woof. That's a lot. There must be a lot of fatigue right there. In 2021, Mr. Penn was named the Western Regional Minority Development Council's Diversity Leader of the Year and the Associated General Contractors of California's Construction Education Foundation Friend Award winner. He has a BA from San Francisco State University, which is one of my alma maters, and has a Master's of Public Administration from University of San Francisco, USF Dons. Thank you very much and welcome, Mick.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, hey, thank you. Our second panelist is Shaune Gbana. And Shaune runs All Bay Area Glass, which is a premium Oakland-based woman-owned contractor. They are certified DBE by the CCP, their small business certification from GSA, and their small local business, minority business, and women-owned business certified by the San Francisco BART District. All Bay Area Glass, second generation glass and glazing contractor specializing in curtain walls, storefront entrances, windows, security and non-security glazing for projects throughout the greater Bay Area. All Bay Area Glass has 15 years of proven track record providing services on public, private, state, local projects, design build projects, and lead projects. They treat each project with the same level of attention to quality and delivery. Current projects include working on the BART headquarters with Turner Construction, They are working on the bark canopies with Shimmick and working on the Brooklyn Basin Foonloke building with Nibby. Welcome, Shaune.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you. And our final panelist is Henry Nutt. Henry is Preconstruction Executive with Southland Industries. He's been there for 15 years as in that role, but comes from the trades, where he was also a sheet metal general superintendent for 13 years. So he's been a sheet metal worker since 1987. So currently he's chair for the AGC of America's National D&I Steering Committee, and also sits on the AGC CA and DEI Steering Committee. Currently the vice chair, National Board of Directors for Lean Construction Institute. And in his spare time, he's also an author and has a book coming out in late March, The 7 Principles Creating Your Success in the Construction Industry. So we will also have links on how to get that book on your shelf. So welcome all of you. I want to start off, and Mick, I'm going to throw the first question to you. My grandfather, so I'm a San Francisco native, my grandfather and my dad came here in the 50s. Both worked in construction for a period of time, but at my dinner table, construction was never really thought of as a place where it was even thought of that I would go to work. So was kind of interested in talking a little bit about the image of the construction industry among Black people. Now, obviously, we're not monolithic, so this is your perspective on that experience. But if you can give me some of your thoughts on the image of the construction industry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tim. And I do want to send a shout out to 2 Webcorians that I've had the pleasure to work with, Tyrone Evans and Michelle Nolan, really great people. But I guess, so my image of construction where the rubber met the road was when I was working at Mission Hiring Hall. And for those of you who don't know Mission Hiring Hall, it's a workforce development organization. It's a nonprofit, but it had a really robust construction training program there. The city build sector coordinator. We used to do placement, job placement, construction job placement in the Mission Bay, which is an area where you have a Webcor office. Anyway, Mission Hiring Hall also had general employment, and I was plugged into the general employment portion. And I forget who it was. It might have been who was going to soon become my new supervisor, or maybe it was the executive director. And they came to me and said, "Hey, Mick, we're moving you to the construction department." I was like, "No, you're not." Like, why would I want to do that? Because I had this image of construction being older guys, yelling at each other all day. It was tinged with sexism, racism, homophobia. Why would I get involved with anything like that? And so I realized quickly, though, they weren't asking me to move to the construction department. They were telling me I was moving to the construction. I was being voluntold. So 14 years later, it's been, a journey. That preconceived notion, still kind of dictates how I see the industry. I'm amazed at from when Henry and I were working out there with Mission Hiring Hall and the folks and other projects to where the industry is now. The amount of diversity that has come into the industry, but it's been a great journey, and I feel like I still got a ways to go in it. But that initial thought of growing up and what construction is wasn't very positive.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your candor. And thank you all. And just this sort of should go without saying is that, we want to make sure that these are very, very candid responses you all are given. And so I appreciate that. Shaune, I'm going to call on you next. You are a family owned business, so it's been in your blood for a while. So what's your take on this about the image?
Yeah, so I would agree with Mick. We have come a long way, but we have not made it there yet. When I view the construction industry, it is not a reflection of myself. I am a Black woman, you know, women-owned business in this industry. And when I go to outreaches or, you know, when I go to any type of meeting, I don't really see anyone that looks like me. So it feels uncomfortable. It feels like I don't have a seat at the table. And so as a woman in this business, I also feel that this also affects the Black community. If we go back to what this means and who are these, what is the construction industry targeting? Does that look like me? When we're building up the community, are we building up a construction project where there's inclusion, you know, or is it for a different targeted market? So I feel like it definitely, we've come a long way, but there's still so much more to go. So many more miles to go. And the same issues that my father had, going back to 1987, like Henry, when he joined the trade, we still have those issues where we're not represented, especially for Black women. So we need to see more Black women at the table, definitely.
Oh my goodness, I support that 100%. Thank you for that one. Henry, you know, for you, you're coming in the trades back in 1987. So you've seen it on both sides, where you've seen it, you know, working as in pre-construction and from the view from the trades. What's your view?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my dad was actually in the trade, and he ended up forming his own business. So he had for about a decade in the city of Oakland. So he had a sheet metal company there, and it's been a struggle, you know, and looking at to Shaune's point of, it's all about people seeing yourself in other places and having a level of comfort. And I think it's hard for people to understand that if that's not been what you've had to face. So if you go into a space where everyone looks like you don't necessarily understand what that means when it's not happening. And so, or if you go into a place where you're not the majority, then you may feel a little bit of that. But this is every day, right? So I think it's impactful in regards to why people of color or women don't necessarily gravitate to this industry, because it's been proliferated by white males. Just what it's been, right? So getting to break that cycle, you got people like us on this call, and we're in our own right, attempting to move the needle forward and pass on a different legacy for others. So we pave the way for other people. I pave the way for people to get into the trades, and they have to make their own way, but they get an opportunity that they may not have because I sit at the table where I can make a decision and say, I choose you, you know, and so I've been able to do that in a very fair way, right? So it's been a challenge. We definitely have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do in how we message the construction industry as a whole. And we all have a responsibility. It doesn't lie just on one class of people. Really, it's on all of us to really be intentional about how do we transform the image of what it means to be in the construction industry and be professionals in this industry.
Wow. Thank you. It's so interesting that you say that, because what you're talking about, I thought was really powerful that you said, sitting across the table and saying, I choose you. And that kind of leads me to my next topic. And that's about access. It's about getting your foot in the door and getting to sit at that table. Right now in the news, the NFL, the Brian Flores lawsuit, very, very prominent in the news. And essentially what's going on there is a question of access. And, you know, currently, before this hiring cycle was done, there was one Black head coach in the NFL after the firings happened. And because of the lawsuit, and I think it's really, in my opinion, it's a direct result of that, we had two minority candidates that got hired in, you know, Mike McDonald by the Miami Dolphins, and Lovie Smith getting hired by the Texans. that question of access starts to come up. There's a Rooney Rule that comes in talking about interviewing minority candidates, but the question that's coming up in that lawsuit is that actually increasing representation? Because so far that answer is no. So Shaune, I'm going to throw this question to you first. This question of access, how do you feel, what barriers are there? You know, similar to some of the what we talked about with the Rooney Rule, there are LBE, SBE, WBE requirements that are built into some contracts. Do you feel like that helps access? Does it hinder access? What are your thoughts?
So we can really get confused with the acronyms. First of all, LBE means local business enterprise. That does not necessarily mean that you will get a Black woman business or any Black business. SBE means small business enterprise, meaning that that's their gross revenue. Does not necessarily mean that you will get a Black business. WBE, that's where it comes into play for me. You don't see those set goals enough. We need to see those goals so that I can be involved or be included, which means women business enterprise or minority business enterprise. So you do see a lot of the LBE, the SBE, but you don't see enough of the WBE. So then that puts me in the category with everyone else, and I'm up against everyone else. And so helping the process would be that you actually set aside a percentage goal for women, just all for women. Let me compete against the women. Lower that leveling playing ground so that I can be able to have access. I find that a big barrier is like some of the general contractors. They're not all as nice as Webcor. This is wonderful. You know, this is magnificent to have this platform, but this is not welcome. So this is the beginning of exposure and change, but you don't see that everywhere. You see sometimes general contractors resisting, wanting to work with us. Me being a Black woman. Well, I don't know her. So I've had those things actually said to me. Forget that my father started in this trade in 1987, and I have 35 years of proven track record, and then I have 15 years on my own. But you don't know me. So that kind of that slam in the door is really, really hard for me. Or, you know, I don't know her, so I think she needs to bond this project. Well, you didn't have bonding conditions to begin with. So I feel like there still is those barriers and that resistance because general contractors have their favorites, just like we have our favorites. And so helping the process would be before you set these goals, or before you select these pre-selected general contractors, let's see their proven track record of working with women businesses, minority businesses, because today we're talking about Black businesses. Let's see how they have married those relationships prior to the requirements that are needed and go from there.
Tim, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
can I
please.
piggyback? So thank you, Shaune. I think as a history lesson for folks that don't know about Prop 209, when Prop 209 passed, which effectively ended affirmative action in California, where there were MBE, minority business, women business goals, people call it the MeBe-Weebie, in my estimation, looking at the data, it decimated, Black businesses. When we were Swinerton on a project, I had the pleasure to sit down and interview Alan Dones, who's a developer of Suda. And he took me back to a time, probably when your dad was, going, kind of the tail end of that period where there were large Black contractors priming work, right? Because they were given the opportunity, based on, various policies and allowed to get a fair share of the marketplace, painting companies doing the whole war memorial, and so I think what we need to think about is the incredible benefit that companies like Shaune and Harris Hoisting and Geron Construction form in the community, because they hire from the community, they provide opportunities, and I think that companies need to have advocates within there. Shaune's still kind of dancing around with us and getting some work, but I feel it's my responsibility to help placer, like Henry said, that ability to say yes, I think companies need to have advocates for the minority businesses, for the women businesses, because they are really the heart and soul of our communities, and being able to uplift people through the trade. So I just wanted to tag that little bit on to the back of what Shaune was talking about.
And thank you for that. I mean, I think that this one, and Henry, definitely want to hear from you on this topic as well, that the whole thing is that if we can't make decisions by virtue of cronyism, and it feels like that's what happens. Otherwise, the industry doesn't change. Someone's going to have to take a chance, and that access, honestly, if the work is out there and we give it to you and it doesn't go well, then that's one thing. But we have to give the chance. Because all of a sudden, we're going to find out that there's all sorts of other businesses that can do this job very, very capably and have all this new access. So I think that that's a great point that both of you are making. Henry, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on Mick there, in my role and capacity of being a hiring manager, and looking at the folks that, when you give people opportunities, how that impacts the community. And so it reverberates all the way back to when the impact is like comes full circle. So you take a community that has a high crime rate, and you provide jobs in that community, that crime rate will decrease. You will impact that community overnight by creating an opportunity for people to gainfully be employed and provide for their families like anybody else wants to do. And so some of the decisions that we make, or some of the barriers that we present, they end up coming back affecting the very people that may have issue with creating opportunities. So it'll affect you in an indirect way, but then directly. And so it's important that we understand the seeds that we plant, the opportunities that we create, and the reason why it's so important to have creating diversity, diversity of thought, and diversity of gender, and diversity of ethnicity, all those different ideas that come to the table to help people understand where their blind spots exist. I can't see and understand what I haven't lived or experienced. I can't tell you what it feels like if I've never walked in your shoes. And that's okay, but it's not okay if you just stay that way and you're aware of your blind spots, but you still don't want to make a change. So some of those barriers to entry are created because of ignorance, in the fact that we choose not to invite others in that think differently, that may have the same concept in regards to where we have to be, but how they get there may look different, may feel different, but they still will get there. And sometimes we're so comfortable with it being the way it was that we don't open doors for others that can do the very same thing or even better, but because it doesn't feel the same, or it's not by somebody that I know and love and feel like, that has this kind of homogeneous kind of, thing going on with me. It's breaking out of those barriers, and some of that education has to happen within that group. And that's why these types of things are so important, because you get a chance to kind of get a synopsis of the day in the life. You get to understand where I get to take some of my field leadership to different programs like City Build, where they get to walk in and talk to people that are just looking for opportunity. They're not looking for a handout. It's not a charity case. They want a job so they can provide for their families like anybody else does. And so one of the best ways for us to help create that knowledge and that understanding and that empathy was to take people down there and show them and work with these students that just want a job and an opportunity or a career path. And they walk away with this life-changing experience saying, wow, yeah, they want what my son or daughter wants, you know, that's all they want. They want an opportunity. And so helping to kind of really come against that mindset that creates the barriers, that creates the resistance, or creates that block that exists where people don't want to kind of open up and say, they're no different than me. They may look different, but they're really no different than me, because all they want is opportunity like I've always had.
Wow. Henry, thank you so much. And it's so interesting. It's like I was when Mick talked about affirmative action ending, and I'm looking at the Cal placard behind me, and I am a very proud Cal Bear and Cal alum. I am a product of affirmative action that got me into Cal, but affirmative action didn't get me out of Cal. Like, all it did is it provided the access, and then I had to perform. And I think that that's all we're talking about is access and an opportunity, and then let the talent rise to the top.
Hey, Tim, if I can just interrupt very briefly, there are no questions in the queue. So I wanted to remind everybody, if the conversation's provoking any questions, or you have questions in general that you'd like to pose to this excellent panel, use that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll run by your questions as we get closer to the end of the session.
Thank you, Shal. So I wanted to talk about, so let's imagine that the image of the industry improves to the point where Black people feel a level of comfort of getting into the industry, and the access is there so that people can get in. There's still one last variable that has to happen, which is something that we're talking about a lot more in Webcor, which is inclusion. And inclusion basically talks about, once you're in the room, whose voice is heard, who feels comfortable, who feels welcome. And so I want to spend a little time kind of talking about that, about what you feel that level is, whether it's your personal experience or the experience that other Black people that you know have had when it comes to being in a company. I mean, personally, when I came to work at Webcor, I worked in an HR department where I was one of 4 Black people in a 12-person department. I happened to have a supervisor, a leader in Maylin, who was about as inclusive and welcoming. And we had an IT department down the hall that had more Black people than the HR department did. So I couldn't have had a more welcoming experience. But when I went out and started seeing some of the construction sites, the diversity wasn't the same. It wasn't that same experience. And it has become a bigger conversation with us. So Henry, I'm going to start with you on this one. What's your feeling about that level of inclusion that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, as far as the industry as a whole, it's still not where it should be. We probably, I believe, African Americans make up maybe 6% of the construction industry, and 3% for craft workers for women, just to throw that out there. But as far as like someone like myself who's been in the industry for 34 years, right, 15 years here, my voice is gonna get heard. I've been through my curve and learning, but that wasn't the way it always was. And it's part of the book that I have written that talks about those types of things in the journey. But there was a time and a place where I was completely intimidated and wouldn't speak up about anything, even if I felt my ideas were better than others, because I didn't feel like it would be received well. And what I seen and heard didn't promote me or encourage me to think about that. You know, just shut up and do your job is kind of how you felt. And so there is, although there is a momentum and there are things that are happening now to get people engaged. Part of it being the labor shortage that we have and that we need to find people in different areas. And so we're looking for different ways to navigate through that and create opportunities and get other people involved to reach out and do the outreach and recruiting. But it's still a lot of work. There's still a huge gap we have to close And I, again, what I tell people in regards to opportunity and creating that inclusion or that inclusive kind of work environment is about our voice and about the confidence that we have or the confidence that we lack. And for years, I like I said, I didn't speak up. And one day I had to realize that I became my own worst enemy. I didn't have to have anyone say anything about me negatively or feel a certain way about me. It was created in my own mind. So it was enough for me to kind of work on automatic pilot in a deficit and just be in the shadows on purpose. There's a book by Carter G. Woodson that talks about Black people will create a door to escape out of the back versus the front, because that's how we've been conditioned to think, and so it's how we empower ourselves. And many times we're in places where no one will look like us, think like us, act like us, or whatever. And we have to figure out ways to develop that for ourselves so that we can be in that space. If I would have never done that, if I would have stayed behind the scenes and just accepted what was in front of me, I would not be here. I would not be in the career that I have today. I would have never written a book. I would have been still in the shadows. And so it's, how do you push yourself out there? And I had some people that were a part of that to help me get there, but I had to stay there, and so it's really important that you look at yourself and you look around and say, who are the leaders? Who are the people that are helping me? And sometimes they're not there because you're the one that needs to step up and do those things. And so sometimes it's about that and recognizing that no one's going to do this for me. No one's going to sit here and say, okay, Henry, here's a pathway. Sometimes I have to figure out how to create that pathway myself. And I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm not saying that, we don't need help to do that. But there are times when I have to just take that bull by the horns and say, I'm not waiting for someone to give me access. I'm going to break the damn door down myself. Kick me out if you don't want me there. But I'm here, right?
Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how much I love that. And it's a really, really tough thing, because that mindset is probably in most of us. That if there is that backdoor comment that you made, I thought was really, really powerful. And finding that voice within yourself to say that, no, I'm here, so therefore I will be heard. I think that that's very, very powerful. Shaune, what are your thoughts on inclusion?
So I definitely agree with Henry. I have to be the squeaky wheel. It is so different compared to Henry and Mick or Brittany or Kamika or yourself, Tim, in this field, as far as me being a subcontractor. I am the only Black woman in the entire state of California that has this license. So I have to speak up. I have to be assertive. And I'm sorry if I feel like I'm yelling, because I'm passionate about what I do. It just didn't fall in my lap. This is, decades to come of generations of building on top of what we've done. So I can't be silent, but it's uncomfortable. When I am assertive, it may come off as being aggressive. If I'm passionate about something, it may come off as me being a B. Mm-hmm. So I hate that image that it has, but I'm still going to keep fighting and keep putting our company out there, because I am paving the way. And that's just what needs to be done. But I too like to sink down and just sit there and observe, but I cannot do that. I have to speak up.
Shaune, a couple of things there. Number one, you are definitely not shouting, and I love every bit of strength that is coming across. And really, it puts a level of responsibility on all of us men who are on this call, especially, that unconscious bias isn't something that only goes against race. It definitely has so many female factors as well. And all of us can be guilty of that, myself included. So I appreciate that reminder. And I think that all of us need to look at that perception that when it's going off in your mind, are you checking that? Are you checking that and saying, all right, I'm hearing it as a certain way. Is that me? is that a me thing, or is it really what's going on with them? Because our brains will tell us lots of stories that don't actually exist. So thank you very much for that. Mick, definitely want to hear from you, my man. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, before I go into there, I can't say enough, hire more Black contractors. Contract with more Black contractors. Let's be intentional about it, okay, folks? So and I saw some questions, and we can get to those later. As far as the inclusion and thinking about, you know, the people part of the business and the hiring, Henry and I work with the AGC of California on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee, and Aaron Volk, who's the vice president of AGC, the workforce side, said something that was so profound one time. It was, you know, it stuck with me. We love doing diversity work, right? You know, getting out, going to the Cypress Mandelas, going to the City Builds, Richmond Build, Future Build, Rising Sun, right? You know, getting out and going to college recruitment, you know, that work is so rewarding, you know, it really just, you know, makes me smile to meet people, get them to the door. But if our companies aren't prepared to help them succeed, you know, it's, I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, but it's just, we are denying the opportunity to develop talent. I was with another company, and we began doing college recruitment at a school that nobody was recruiting at, and ended up hiring quite a few women of color, Latinx, Persian, that the industry wasn't even thinking about trying to reach out and get them. So the diversity work worked, right? And they are still in the industry, right? You know, they may not be with our company or that company, but when I see them on LinkedIn, I'm like, go girl, you do it. You know, and I follow them and I shoot, because I'm just so proud, because I know it takes a level of grit because of where the industry is. But do you think if we had a more inclusive industry, and there wasn't the attrition that happens, oh man, I forget that stuff. You know, I'll find something else to do. You know, I'll go to the owner side. We're, you know, by not having inclusive cultures, and I'm not saying this in a Webcor or Swinerton way. I just think generally the industry needs to do a better job collectively of being inclusive and understanding that we need to nurture this talent versus, you know, scare the talent away. We're going to be in a bad way. Everybody keeps talking about, especially on the craft side, you know, the oh yeah, we have the gray tsunami, we're going to lose all these folks, you know, this, that, and the other. Well, I go out, you know, somebody gets a job, and then, you know, reaching out, where are you at now? Oh, I'm not working. So we need to be intentional about making sure that candidates that come in that may not look like our composite crews, right? May not look like our, you know, typical PE, that we are investing in that person. If that person is contributing, you know, wants to learn, we need to invest in them. We need to almost treat them like the superintendent's son, right? Superintendent's son comes on the job. He ain't going to be the first one off, right? Maybe, you know, you send them home for a week, you know, say, man, you need to get your act together or something like that. I mean, if we want to move the needle, you know, and especially thinking about Black people, if we really want to move the needle with Black people, we need to come up with more creative strategies around inclusion. One of the things I was thinking about, as far as, and I don't know who owns this, you know, who runs with this, but, you know, we Black craft retention program. Maybe that happens with the Carpenters Union. You know, they've had a lot of success with Sisters of the Brotherhood. They're kind of women's support, I guess, networking. But if we want to bring in, you know, Black talent, we need to make sure that that Black talent is supported. And I don't know if the infrastructures are in place to do it. And it's kind of sad, because, you know, when I began my career, there were so many carpenters and laborers and painters that were in San Francisco, Black painters that would come in, you know, for job placement because of, you know, kind of the community activism that happened there. But I think we got a lot of work to do in the inclusion space. We need to think outside the box. The last piece, and I'll hand it back to you, is I have a friend that sits on that was asked to give testimony around reparations, right? And for folks, reparations, formerly enslaved folks, and figuring out and the conversation that it's not around, monetary compensation. It was about the idea of underrepresented areas and investing funds to bring people into living wage jobs and be successful. More diversity. But if we're not ready to take people in, it's almost, and this industry should, by all the messaging that, we need people, we should be doing everything in our power to keep anybody that's interested in and wanting to be a part of the industry.
Oh man, so many powerful things there. The thing you said about the superintendent's son, I love that. The superintendent's son or daughter, that we treat people like that and wrap our arms around them. I think that becomes powerful. I want to save a little time for Q&A. So I want to give each of you 1 minute just to say, what is your wish? What one thing would you like to see change in the industry? Shaune, I want to start with you.
So I can't say it enough. I think I've said it about 25 times, but Black women, women business enterprises included. Now, this is not forced, considered before the project starts, because it's so hard to kind of marry something when it hasn't been in place. But keep that goal in mind before you send this project out, even if it's not required. But women business enterprise, Black women business enterprises. We need to see more goals, and not forced goals, but let us at least be on that percentage, or have a percentage set aside for women business enterprises. I can't say it enough. Let me say it one more time. Women business enterprises, minority business enterprises, Black women, all Bay Area glass.
Perfect.
That's what I would like to see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Henry, same question.
Yeah, so just there's so much, but I guess the one thing that I would want to leave everyone with, and it goes back to my years of being in the industry and then seeing my father, we have accepted so much BS in this industry, and it's been okay. It's been okay to be an a-hole. It's been okay to be a misogynist, a jerk, and blame it on the industry. It's construction. We accept that. We accept being lack. We accept coming to a job where maybe 10 years ago, it's okay to have porn in a game box. You open it up and there are nude women on the game box and no one blinked. That was not that long ago. We have accepted mediocrity in this industry, and we have said, hell, it's construction. I want us to raise the bar and stop accepting mediocrity. So I try to tell people, especially in the field side, let's reclassify ourselves as construction professionals. Look at yourself as a professional, not just a plumber, not just a welder, not just a sheet metal worker, but a professional. So when you think about a professional, think about professional doctor, lawyer, athlete, whatever. There's a level of excellence that's expected with a profession. Why are we second class? Why do we allow ourselves to be considered second class? Oh, it's just construction. So I'm saying, let's raise the bar, let's change the mindset, let's reclassify ourselves as construction professionals. And maybe if we think that way and see ourselves that way, maybe we start treating people like Shaune and others with respect. Or it doesn't even have to be about a Black, white woman. It's just, you're a human. I want to respect you. I want to give you a fair shot. I want to give you an opportunity because I'm a professional. And that's how I live my life. That's how I conduct myself in my career. So that's my wish.
Thank you, Henry. And I tell you, I want to hire Shaune tomorrow. So thank you. Mick.
I think so many like Henry, and Henry, as always, you're amazing. I think I've been up against something, and I guess it's a vision of, our craft population is probably about 75 Latinx, right? That for successful, like I used to love people graduating from City Build. I love when people graduate from Cypress Mandela and they begin that career. That there's got to be a way for the real people that are working with them. It's one thing about me going and saying, hey, we're going to hire you and whatnot, but to make sure that our Latinx population, that our craft population feels respected and valued, but that they are opening to creating the space of working with folks that don't look like them. Because I think if you don't have that, once again, I can do diversity all day. I love it, working with middle school kids, high school kids, college recruiting, college recruiting out of this example, but, getting people into the craft side. I mean, it's so we need to lock arms with our Latinx brothers and sisters and create an inclusive culture out in the field.
Thank you very much. Let me pass it over to Shell for Q&A.
And we have a bunch, starting with one for Shaune. It's a tough one for you, Shaune. Sky Murphy says, I'm looking for a glazer on a job in Alameda. What's the best way to connect with you to talk about getting a bid?
Oh my gosh. You can reach me. I can put it in the Q&A. Would that work?
Sure. Or just share it with Tim,
Oh.
and he can get it to Sky.
Okay. Well, okay. Absolutely. Thank you. I look forward to the opportunity.
Sure. Kathleen Leslie has a question. A challenge during the procurement phase is that we want to hire minority and women-owned firms, but we don't know who they are. What do you recommend as a way for GCs to be aware of what firms are out there?
I'll take that. And Shaune, if you want to piggyback on me, there are quite a few organizations that they're, what they do is they support, minority women firms, right? Thinking here locally, NAMAC, which kind of in a weird situation, but they'll come back. There's leaders, Mario Wagner. I want to shout him out, with regards over in Oakland. But I think you got to do your homework, right? I think you need to be at events where the diverse contractors, I'll just use that, women, minority women, and just build your Rolodex. If anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Penn at Swinerton.com. Have a little Rolodex going of firms that I'd be happy to share. But I think you got to get out into the community. You got to, and then also, hosting outreach events. There's so many people that I've met through outreach events, and thinking of a Harris Hoisting. Took us 2 years to get Harris Hoisting, African-American hoist operator, on one of our jobs. And now she's got 3 or 4 jobs with us. So, I think we put too much of the onus on the small contractors connecting with us. What about us putting the energy to connect with them?
Awesome. And sorry for my delay, but I am registered as a certified small business enterprise with the city of Oakland. So usually you can go to their website and look for small businesses that are certified with the city of Oakland. I know you can do the same for the county of Alameda if you have a project that is within that county. So each city should have a list of, minority women businesses. It should be a code. It actually should say Shaune All Bay Area Glass, and then it should say WBE or MBE. You can also contact the Oakland Chamber of Commerce. And then, like Mick said, just do your own outreach. think the Builders Exchange, I think they also have a list of us. And you can call me or email me, and I'll be happy to give you my resources.
Next question. There's a lot of conversation about the Black community and local business enterprises, which is an important part of the industry. But how can we get representation and inclusion in executive roles and higher positions in larger GCs?
Well, I'm not a GC, but I am an executive in my company. And I think it's part of that is you have to have a company that is gonna have an opening, an opportunity that creates a space for you and has intentionality in regards to development of its people to have a way of climbing the ladder and within the company. So there's a process that exists that is tangible that helps a person develop their career and mentoring within the company to create that type of opportunity, and then the space to actually get you ready and prepared to be in that role, in that position. So I think there has to be some diligence around the actual company, and there is a pathway that is clear to all for that opportunity. And then it's about, then you can go and choose that for yourself and be developed for that opportunity to exist with whatever time frame that takes. So it really is the homework that the individual companies are doing and how they shape that so that it doesn't seem like an elite club that is for others. And there are people around that are in the current roles that look like you. So you know that it's not, you don't have to break a glass ceiling to get there. So again, but that all revolves around what that company current executive team structure even looks like. So there has to be some diligence about that and say, hey, we need to make some changes here because we want these folks here, but if they're here for 5 or 10 years, then what happens when they're ready to go to the next level? If they feel like it's not going to be there, then they're going to go somewhere else where they can climb the ladder. So it's really, having that kind of structure that I believe gives you opportunity.
Ditto to what Henry said.
Next question, Black participation in STEM disciplines is dwindling. Are you participating in outreach to schools to encourage Black students to pursue?
I'll take that one.
I guess I can chime in on that. I'm sorry, Mick.
No, go, Shaune.
So sometimes we are invited to, local high schools, or I may partner up with Cypress Mandela and try to do like an intern. And that's as far as like we've gone, but we definitely need to do more in that category. But that's some of the outreaches that we have done personally.
Okay. You can write it down, the Hidden Genius Project. It's an Oakland-based mentorship program for African-American, Latinx youth that is STEM-based. And the gentleman that owns it, runs it, his name is Brandon Nicholson. Been talking to him about, getting some of, our Black project engineers and whatnot in front of them just to show the careers. But I think there's organizations out there that are focused on recruitment. We do a summer series with United Players, which is a real diverse group of students, AAPI, Latinx, Black, middle school children, but, I think once again, we need to do the work to find the folks and get out there. But Hidden Genius Project, amazing organization.
Next question for Henry. What have you learned to tell yourself when you take the risk to speak up and end up making a mistake or being wrong? How do you help yourself bounce back into the forefront?
That's a great question. And I say it takes a lot of time to get to that place because I don't think I find myself bouncing back too much anymore, honestly. It's been so much work to get here in regards to you say something and sometimes you put your foot in your mouth or sometimes you make mistakes. But what I've learned with that is if I'm not making a mistake, I'm probably not doing much. And so I'm no different than anyone else. and the color of my skin does not make me different necessarily. It's the experiences that I have because of the color of my skin. And so what I look at is, if not me, then who? And I have to figure out, one is, this is not just about myself when I'm out there. It's about my children, it's about my community, it's about the people that I haven't met that need a pathway. And so it took a lot of courage. And it's like a seed being planted in the dirt. No one sees the seed in the dirt until it sprouts out of the ground. And even then, it's not ready to do much yet, And so it's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of behind the scenes things that you have to do to get there. And no one ever just arrives on the scene, like ready to go. Like the history and the stories and the BS and all the crap that I've had to take, there's a story of why I'm here that I could share with you that you would be amazed. Like, how did you make it, right? So you go through all that, and now you're in a phase in your life where you're not thinking about apologizing for being who you are. And not that I try to step on feet intentionally, but I know that I do. But I know that I'm not doing it, since I'm not doing it intentionally, I am going to keep moving. I do less time looking back saying I'm sorry, because everyone won't understand or get me. And I have to show up every day in my mind, in my spirit, in my heart, ready to do the work every day. And there are days I don't feel like doing that, but it's not just about me. So I have to just keep moving forward and not looking back and being discouraged, because it would be so easy to do that, but there's too much at stake. So my motto for life is keep pressing.
Tim, we have a few questions left, but we're running up on 1 p.m. and I know Matt is here to close out. What do you want to do?
Sorry about that. If we have time, for those of you who need to go, I totally understand that, but I would love for us to get to some of the remaining questions. So those of you who don't mind staying with us a little bit longer, can let's keep going with the questions, and then we will pass over to Matt.
Right. Well, Mark Delgado says, not a question, but rather a compliment for Shaune. I don't see a B. I see a strong person that I would look forward to working with. Then Kathleen asks, what do you think it will take to encourage women and Black people to join the trades?
Well, I'll start with that one, I guess. It's going to, like, I think Mick talked about it, there's a lot of programs around that really try to connect with people in different communities. And there are people of color and women, like Rising Sun, City Build, Suffers Mandela, all these different programs that exist. There's plenty more in partnering with them, from the local unions to the actual companies, to really kind of, again, lay this pathway and getting people involved that look like them. So when you show up, when we go to City Build or wherever, not only do I show up, but I have others that look like me show up, because they need to see us. They need to see people. They need to see women in the sheet metal industry. They need to see women and men doing different things that look like them, so they can say, oh, that's a possibility, not that's for that other person. So I think it's the intentionality, going into the schools, creating an esteem and raising the image of what it means to be a construction professional. Going back to that, this is a viable career path, and we did a really disservice to the industry by telling people it's for college is first, and this is like for second-class citizens, so the ones who aren't as smart going to construction, and so we need to, we're changing that image, but that's a part of it as well.
I think, the programs that Henry described, those kids like Cypress Mandela, they run them. They go without pay, a small stipend. I mean, people are really putting their energy and their hearts into getting into the industry. They're willing and able. I just feel, and from doing it for, some time, there was a young man A real brief, African-American man from the Bayview, wanting to change his life, came on with a drywall contractor at some point in time in my life doing this. And, the guys were clowning him out in the field, you know what I mean? And he was coming to work, enthusiasm. He might not have known what he was doing, right? But that isn't that part of the apprenticeship, So he wasn't supported, ended up going, back to what he was, doing. And, I see him on Facebook now, with, in that life. And I just think if the had been more inclusive of this gentleman and had invested in this gentleman and given this gentleman more time to develop, they would have probably had a very dedicated employee. But now, as Henry mentioned, where there are jobs, in communities, the violence goes down. When I look at my man's life, I'm like, whoa, you living out there. So I think there's more than enough. I think there's tons of women and Black people that want to get in the industry. But if we don't keep them in this industry, that's on us.
Right. And I would agree with Henry and Mick as far as just stay engaged. Just like how we have to stay engaged, I think the responsibility of of general contractors, they also too need to stay engaged and then keep up with the issues like Mick said. If you see someone and there's a cultural difference and that there's a difference of diversity, be aware of that. Don't look at it as, I don't see color, because we see that expression a lot. And actually in this field, I want you to see me. I want you to recognize that I'm a Black woman in this business. I want you to see me. I want you to stay engaged. I want you to say hello. And if we keep doing that, I think definitely we will see the change that needs to happen.
Michelle, I think we have one more question and then a couple of comments.
My space bar stopped working as a way to unmute. The last question, have any of the panel members had success getting positive change with union politics around recruitment and hiring? We're working with a program in Oakland that trains young people in construction, but they're having a hard time getting into the unions.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it depends on the union. I'll be honest with you. And so I'm out of Local 104, and there is a true relationship with these programs and how they try to get people in and introduce them to the trades. And the unions are going to have their rules in regards to how people, because they're grouped to protect are the members, and so they're not going to allow you to bypass rules and get people in, right, and cut others who are in line. But there are ways that you can navigate around that. And one of the ways that we've done with Local 104 is we get to name hire every other, say, pre-apprentice. And so if I go down to Cypress Mandela or to Cityville and I meet some folks that I want to hire, I may have to hire one extra person to get that person right away. Or I may say, hey, I'm going to get this person, I'm going to get you in a couple of months or weeks. And so, but you have that correspondence you can have. Not all unions work like that, but that's one that does. And there's a program in Sacramento called People Working Together. And it's ran by a gentleman named Kevin Brown, who's a pastor out there, a former ex-baseball player. And he has a dynamic program, and he was able to partner up with the unions up that way, pipe fitters as well as sheet metal, where he had a state program, a state project where he was able to, and I don't even understand how he's done this yet, but because it's the Davis-Bacon Act where you can't hire pre-apprentice, you have to have an indentured apprentice. He trains people to get them into the trade, take the test, and it's a targeted worker program where we've had people that went through this program and immediately were indentured. They didn't have to become pre-apprentices, and they were in the trade, like they're in, like for their 5-year apprenticeship. So I'm not sure how they made that work, but I had never seen it within the last couple of years. So there's some things out there that are possible. It's just a matter of understanding it, and in the part of the union is just working with them to see how they can get engaged. Instead of saying no, what can they do to help with the process.
Yeah, in my time, I've seen the unions go from no to being a part of the process. The electricians, plumbers, not so much. And I'm thinking of San Francisco. But that question was specific to Oakland. Alameda County Building Trades Council is an interesting animal. They get a lot of PLAs. And in their PLAs, that they have a workforce arm. I think I don't know the specifics of your situation. Feel free. I'm mpen at Swinerton. Be happy to help. .com. I do know a little bit about Oakland, and if it's one of the two Cypress Mandela or Rising Sun organizations, I would be happy to assist. It because we are carpenters and laborers signatories. I think you guys are signatories to laborers. I mean, it should be relatively easy, even if we got to send them, then now this becomes your commitment, with, the, one of the projects we were working together, we had to send the women that were going to come to work for us to the Carpenters 6-week pre-apprenticeship program, and know that it was going to be a while before they came. But, that client wanted us to make that investment, and we did collectively. So I think, as Henry said, the union has its processes and rules, but, believe me, I've seen back doors all my career, right? Like, how the hell are you getting it? No, seriously, there was a gentleman, he couldn't read or write, when I was at Mission Hiring Hall and he was coming over to fill out his paperwork. I was like, how did you get into the plumbers? So they're back doors, be happy to help. I love seeing people go to work out of the pre-apprenticeship programs.
And just two comments.
Go ahead, Shaune.
I'm sorry. I would probably deal with what Mick and Henry said. It still is a lot of preference and resistance, and especially being signatory to Local 169, we have a lot of glazers that are sitting down in the hall. So they want to get the existing glazers working before they add anyone else to the list. So it makes it very difficult.
Just two comments very quickly. One says, good news. I do see all Bay Area glass as an approved and pre-qualified in Trade App and CMIC. And an appropriate wrap-up comment, amazing discussion. You all are amazing.
I want to second that. I want to thank the panel, Shaune, Mick, and Henry. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone out there learned a lot. Thank you all for sticking with us about 10 minutes over time. Such an interesting conversation, and I want to thank you all very much. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Matt Rossie for an executive close.
Ooh, the dreaded executive close. So first of all, we all have dedicated ourselves to this incredible industry where we get to create things and we get to build things, and there's huge satisfaction in that. But we got to be honest with ourselves too, which is this is a very, very difficult business to be in. It's tough. And one of the areas where we see how difficult it is as a business is really relative to systemic issues of racism and sexism and lots of other isms in this industry. I am 100% behind Henry's wish that we all just be considered construction professionals. But ultimately, it is up to all of us to fight for inclusion and provide those opportunities and the access. And as part of that, we need to hold each other accountable to those unconscious biases that we can be really susceptible to. You got to recognize the talent. The other thing I would say is that, diverse businesses, it's not just for public works when it's required. We can do that on any project. We can find good, talented small businesses and use them on any of our jobs. Ultimately, when it comes to this opportunity and access for our own employee base, so much of this comes down to where are we looking? And, I'm a broken record to Maylin, I think, about if we hire from the same 3 universities every year, are we just going to keep getting the same people that are attracted to those 3 universities? So we are going to broaden out where we're looking, and actually already have. So to Henry and Shaune and Mick, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. This is hugely valuable, I think, for all of us. And it's even more valuable in terms of you being able to demonstrate what leadership looks like in the construction industry. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for this platform, and thank you to Brittany, Kamika, and Tim, and my co-panelists. This was awesome.
Yeah, I second that. And applaud Webcor for taking the leadership role in doing this. This is amazing. So this is what it looks like to put forth the work and kind of put your money where your mouth is.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I'll leave the frenemy comments for another day.
Come on now, we're JV partners.
I know, we're friends. But no, I thank you, Tim, Kamika, Brittany, from the JV. It's really been enjoyable Henry and Shaune, 2 of my favorites. You know, it's been great to be with you today.
Thank you, cocktails coming soon. So thank you all.